Right, and so this is where we're really going to home in on the meaty stuff, the meaty topics, and show you how you can actually get the best from your standards check. So if you look at the next page or two, it gives you 4 different types of learner, and whatever learner you're taking, if they're a learner or a full licence holder or whatever, they'll fit into one of these 4 categories. There is the partly trained, inexperienced learner, experienced people about ready to take their practical driving test. Then there is the new full licence holder and the experienced full licence holder. So we're going to take some time to talk about each one of these, because this is really one of the main parts of this whole document. So let's go over first of all the partly trained, inexperienced learner. So let's say you've got a learner who's had, let's say, about 20-ish hours of lessons. I'd say kind of 25 and above, they probably get more towards test standard, but it's different for everyone. But if you've got the partly trained, inexperienced learner, this is telling you exactly what you need to do. This is what they want to see. So if you can identify which of these stages your pupil is at, then you can just home in on this and really get the most by reading what it says and doing what it says. So it says, for typical lesson scenarios, the partly trained, inexperienced learner. It says, drivers at this stage of their career are likely to want or need experience of a steadily increasing variety of road and traffic conditions to enable them to develop their basic skills. They may have areas where they are uncomfortable or not yet competent, such as complex junctions or roundabouts, heavy or fast-moving traffic. They may not have a good understanding of theory, for example, of road signs and markings. So if you're taking a pupil who's very new, this is what they're saying they want to see. They don't want to see you going on complex junctions. Don't go and take a new driver on a massive roundabout. They don't want to see you taking a new driver down, heavy traffic down a high street. It says they may not have a good understanding of theory, for example, road signs and markings. So you need to talk about the road signs and the markings. And he carries on, in this context, the key objectives of the national standard for driver and rider training include being able to, and if you haven't already seen this in the part 1 of this video, the first bit I did, the national standard for driver and rider training is a different document which tells you what people should be able to do. Again, not like they should be able to move off smoothly, but it tells you how they should be thinking, the kind of things you should be doing with them, the kind of standard they should be at, but not like they should be changing gears smoothly. It should be that they're competent, that they're confident, that they're able to navigate on their own, whatever. So have a look at that document, the National Standards for Driver and Rider Training, and see what it says in there about the kind of people that you're going to take. Now, here it says you need to create a climate that promotes learning. So in other words, you've got to make it possible for the people to learn by not bombarding them with loads of information they can't handle. So if you've got a new learner, you don't want to be asking them too many questions. Yes, you should ask questions, should be fairly open questions at times, but you must have a climate that promotes a learning opportunity, not one where you're just sitting telling them everything, but not one where you're sitting asking them everything. It should be a balance between the two. Whereas if you took a more experienced people, you'd be asking them pretty much everything. Explain and demonstrate skills and techniques. Transfer the balance of responsibility for their learning, for the learning process to the learner as soon as they are ready to take it. So in other words, what they're saying here, you should make an environment that the learner feels comfortable learning in, explain and demonstrate things, but then transfer responsibility for them as soon as you can. So in other words, don't over-instruct. That's just a very brief summary of that one, but it goes into more detail here. It says, ADI should be working to understand where the pupil is having difficulties and how they can help them develop sound basic skills. So in other words, you've got to identify what the faults are, and this is why it's no different really to a check test, the old style check test. You've got to identify what they need to work on. There's no point working on something if the pupil can already do it, and there's no point working on something if you haven't done something before that. For example, there's no point in working on left turns if the people can't even move off just yet. And as daft as it sounds, I've seen people do that. They're trying to do a lesson on left turns, and they haven't even done moving off or clutch control or anything. And I've had this loads of times where it sounds obvious, but people try and teach skills that are well beyond what the learner is ready for. So It says, by asking questions or staying silent and listening or watching, they are clearly making the effort to understand and demonstrate competence. It doesn't matter if they don't achieve full understanding by the end of the lesson. So that's a really important one. It doesn't matter if they don't achieve full understanding by the end of the lesson. You don't have to have completely finished every single topic or the topic you've chosen by the end of the lesson. If you say, for example, you're going to teach them how to turn left, and by the end of the lesson they can completely turn left on their own, fully, unguided, that's not realistic, is it? You don't have to finish the topic by any means. You must have just made some progress. It may well be that you do a topic and you don't even make much progress on it. You might just, for example, stay at the same level. That's fine as long as you're doing everything you should be doing to make progress happen. So it says in the next paragraph, in the same way, pupils at this level should not feel they are being patronised or talked down to, as this will make them unreceptive. Now, it's quite ironic. It says they do not all learn in the same way. It just says, let's read that again. It says, pupils at this level should not feel they are being patronised or talked down to. They do not all learn in the same way. Isn't that patronising to say they do not all learn in the same way? It doesn't say pupils, just says they. So calling them they is a bit patronising. Anyway, consequently, there is no single correct way to transfer responsibility to them, and in any case, this is not going to take place instantly. That's what we just said. There is not one method that works. People who say, you've got to do this, and you've got to say this, and if you don't, you'll fail. It's rubbish. You can use any method you want. It could be any kind of tool. You can use coaching, instruction, whatever kind of method you want, body language, things you can talk about, like NLP, some kind of psychological, as I said, techniques. It doesn't matter what you do, what method you use, as long as you transfer responsibility. And it does say, that there's no single way of doing it. That's what I mean. You can't just, there isn't the way of teaching, and people say, I've got this way, I've got this way. There is no set way that you have to do it. As long as the learner learns, that's okay. And this is where it's a lot better than the old check test. Because in the old check test, you had to use specific methods of teaching, like, levels of instruction, fully guided, prompted, independent. Nowadays, you can do whatever you need to, whatever needs to be done to achieve the end result. So it does say as well, in this context, just as it is unreasonable to expect a pupil to get it right instantly, so is it unreasonable to expect an ADI to transfer responsibility instantly. So they don't expect you to just tell the people something once and then say, right, over to you. There's a sentence there I might have missed out. No, I didn't. But it says before, anyway, there is no single correct way to transfer responsibility to them. And in any case, this is not going to take place instantly. So they don't expect you to teach someone something instantly. That would be strange if you did. If you just got in the car and said, I'm going to teach you how to turn left. So you do mirror, signal, brake, clutch, down to second, off the pedals, round you go. Right, over to you. And they do it perfectly. Done. That's not going to happen. They know if you do that, you've been practicing it before. There's no way any learner, even the most natural learner, is not going to do it right on the first attempt. It's very unlikely. And it says the key thing that an ADI must demonstrate is that they understand the need to transfer ownership and make the effort to do so. Very important. You make the effort to do so. Doesn't matter if it doesn't happen. If the pupil doesn't get it, if they're not picking it up, and you're thinking, oh no, this is all going wrong because it's my standards check and they've got to pick it up, it's going to look bad on me. If the pupil doesn't make any progress whatsoever, doesn't matter at all if you are taking the correct steps. So as long as you're saying the right thing, doing the right thing, you're using an appropriate method that should be working but it's not, and then you change it, you try something else, that doesn't work, doesn't matter. You don't have to have taught the people something by the end. Ideally you would, in most cases you will. But at the end of the lesson, if you've done everything you possibly could and they're just not picking it up, that's not your fault. And it doesn't matter because it can take a long time. I mean, I've had pupils who have taken, believe it or not, 3 or 4 hours before they can even put the car into first gear. They just cannot even move the gear stick into one for like 3 or 4 hours. They just can't do it. Very rare that, but it can happen. And that's what it says in the next point. This proves I've read this before because I've already spoke about this. It is important to understand that that at this level, the people will not always get it right as soon as the ADI gives them some direction or coaches them around the problem. They should understand the issue, at least in principle, and what they need to do in theory. They should generally be willing to try to overcome weakness, but their efforts may not always be successful. Very important line now for the examiners to remember. You should not penalise the ADI if they do not immediately solve the problem. So that's what I just said. If you don't fix the problem instantly, it doesn't matter. ADI should use a variety of tools to encourage the people to analyse their performance and to find solutions to problems. That's what I was saying just now. Don't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. If you're trying a method, it's not working after 2 or 3 goes, change it, try something different, swap seats, demonstrate, do whatever you need to do to make it work. Don't just keep doing the same thing over and over. Like, if you're talking them through and they're not getting it, ask them, what is it about this you don't get? If you might be doing it perfectly and they're just saying, well, I didn't quite get that one part, it might be you're using a word they don't understand. How many times on lessons have I said to people, you need to signal to the right? And they say, what? Signal. What? And they say, signal. And you spell the word S-I-G-N-A-L. What's that? You will be amazed how many people don't know what the word signal means. They've never heard it before. And I just find this incredible. When I say indicate, oh yeah, indicate, they just don't know what a signal is. I find that so odd, and I'd say probably half of all pupils I've ever taught have no idea what a signal is. And I've written the word down, so it's not the way I'm saying it, it's not my accent or anything, and they don't know what a signal is. Really hard for me to understand, but loads of people don't know what signals are, so I use the word indicate now instead of signal. So it says the ADI should be supportive and give suitable and technically correct instructions or demonstrations where appropriate. That's what we just said about demonstrating. Of course, where people cannot come up with a way forward, the ADI should provide suitable input, especially if failure to do so might result in a risk to any party. So if they're not getting it and there's a danger of you flying out of a junction or whatever, just take over or try it in a different method. So if you've got inexperienced people, that's what they want to see you doing. Read through that time and time again and make sure that your lesson plan fits in with that. So key things from this one are, they don't have to learn it, they don't have to get it right by the end of the lesson. It's perfectly fine to have a people who doesn't quite get it. At the end of the lesson, you haven't fully met the target. If you've got a people at this stage, I'll say keep the target quite vague. Never say to a new pupil, and by the end of today, you'll be able to turn left on your own. So by the end of today, you'll hopefully be able to do a few more left turns on your own. So it's very vague. You haven't pinned yourself down into having to achieve something that's probably going to be impossible. Anyway, just have a quick drink, then we'll go on to the next one. So next one says experienced people about ready to take their practical driving test. This is the one that I did, the kind of people I took. At this stage, the key objective of the national standard for driver and rider training is to work with the learner to agree when they are ready to undertake formal assessment of driving competence. In other words, work with them to agree when they're ready to take the driving test. Evidence suggests that by this stage, some people may, so I'm losing my voice because I've been talking so much. Evidence suggests that by this stage, some people may be technically skillful, be able to complete manoeuvres competently, have experience of driving on a wide range of roads and in a range of conditions. So what they're saying is, they don't really want to see you doing manoeuvres because I can do those competently. They don't really want to see you focusing on the technical side like clutch control and steering. Maybe you'll have to, but that kind of thing should be pretty much out of the way in the early stages. Like that's what you'll be doing with the previous kind of people. They may be confident and feel that they are at the stage of refining their competence around what they need to do to pass the test. So in other words, they want to see that you're teaching people that you're not just trying to pass the test, you're trying to learn to drive, to be safe when you've passed. And this is what I did with my learner. The aim of the subject of my lesson was reducing the chance of you crashing after passing. So that clearly showed the examiner that I'm aware I'm not just teaching them to pass the test. It says, on the other hand, they may have already developed bad habits, especially if they have been taught by a relative or friend. Now, if your pupil is doing private practice with the parents, this is a really common problem. You have a pupil, and I'll tell you about a pupil I had a couple of years back. We went out and did 3 lessons, and she did really well. We did controls, moving off, just started turning left on the 3rd lesson with them braking, going up and down the gears. She came out 2 weeks later on the 4th lesson. Everything had gone completely out the window. She wasn't checking the blind spot, wasn't even looking at the mirrors. She was flying off like revving the engine on mad. And I said to her, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, since our last lesson, I've done about 20 hours with my dad." And I said, "Where have you been?" She said, "Oh, I've been right through the city centre and all the roundabouts, been on the motorway. He took her on the motorway, she hasn't even got a licence yet." I had to stop teaching her. She was so bad. He had filled her with so many bad habits. I said to her, "You are in such a mess, this is going to take hours to sort out." She just would not do anything. All the good driving she'd done with me, gone. She was just driving like a maniac. She'd approach roundabouts like 30 miles an hour, do an emergency stop, skid to a halt, then just go to one and we were wheel spinning off. And that was the way she did it. And, that's that's the way that she'd been taught to drive by her dad. So that's the problem you're going to have if you get pupils who've been taught bad habits by the parents. The next one, they're going to have an inflated opinion of their competence. Some learners have this, like I said, the example I gave you there. Some pupils think that they're really, really good when they're not. And sometimes that can be awkward when they say, "Well, look, I've had 40 hours, my friend passed after 10 hours. You always hear that rubbish around, and my friend passed after 2 lessons," whatever. So that wasn't the case for me, but it may be the case for your pupil. They may have a poor understanding of risk. So they might think, "Well, I've never crashed, I never will crash." They might be doing things that are really dangerous, but they don't realise how dangerous potentially it is. Like the example I gave you, flying up to junctions, and they don't realise how dangerous that actually is. The next one is a big one though, really important. They may have not developed the skills of scanning and planning that will help them to cope when they drive independently. This is what we were focusing on in my lesson until it all went wrong. We had to change lesson plan. Developing the skills of scanning and planning. So if you've got an experienced pupil, you're pretty much always going to be doing the topic of awareness and planning, because pretty much everything comes down to awareness and planning. They want to see that you're teaching your pupil not just how to do a roundabout or how to do this junction or how to reverse round that corner. They want to see that you're developing a universal system that will work on any road. So you're asking the people a lot of things like, what can you see coming up down the road? Oh, there's a tractor. What could be behind the tractor? Maybe a motorbike. Is he going to overtake? That kind of thing. So scanning and planning, not specific junctions and specific things. It's like a universal skill that you can apply to different situations. It also says they may have not developed skills of reflection that will help them learn to be lifelong learners. That's the topic I was doing. You need to understand that when they've done something, they need to analyse it. So you might go and do a really horrible roundabout, pull over and talk about it. What was good about that? What was bad about that? What could be better? How would it be different in the dark? How would it be different in the rain? So you've got to get them thinking back. You're not teaching these kind of people how to drive so much, but how to think. So it's the thinking that's really important. Then he goes on to say, they may not be used to being challenged to analyse and come up with solutions. That's just what I mentioned just now. They might not be used to being challenged about what they do. They might just think that what they're doing is fine, and that's how they've been taught to do before, which may not be the correct way. They could be impatient and resistant to correction if they do demonstrate bad habits. So they might resist what you're saying and say, "Oh no, you're wrong," because they'll believe the parents over you. You probably heard the saying, "Blood is thicker than water." Pupils will nearly always listen to what the parents say above what an instructor says, just because it's their parents. But I find you very quickly get over that if you actually give them practical examples and demonstrations. They'll say, "Oh yeah, maybe they're wrong and you're right." So they may well have forgotten a lot of what they learned when they did the theory test. That's often true. You get people who passed the theory, well, they have passed it a year ago or even a month ago, and they've forgotten loads. They don't remember much about it at all. So maybe dig into that, maybe talk to them about a theory test. Responses at this level could vary from enthusiastic acceptance of the information they need to real resistance to being told things they do not think are relevant. So you might tell a people who's experienced something and they'll say, oh yeah, I never thought of that. That makes sense now. One example I often do is when I say about traffic lights and they can't remember whether flashing amber means stop or go. Well, a flashing amber looks like a hand waving you through like that. It's kind of flashing saying come through, come through. Whereas a steady amber is saying stop because it's going to go red. And if you say things like that, they'll say, oh yeah, never thought of that. But some people will think, oh, that's rubbish. What's that mean? Everyone just goes through anyway. My parents told me if you goes red, you don't matter, just keep going. These are the things you have to deal with. And again, this will depend on the people you take. During their standards check, the ADI must demonstrate that they understand the key issues that need to be addressed to try to reduce the number of newly qualified drivers who crash in the first 6 months. That's why my topic was virtually the same as that, reducing the chance of crashing in the first 6 months. That's what ADI 1 says the examiners are looking for. And this isn't tricking it, this isn't cheating your way through a test. That's what you should be teaching anyway. They should be working to develop a realistic understanding of ability and an enhanced understanding of risk. So Laura just said, you should be working with them to analyse what they've done, to reflect on what they've done and see if what they're doing is correct or not. Not just do it and think, well, that was okay. They've got to analyse what they're doing. They should be checking, developing and reinforcing systematic scanning and planning tools. Again, scanning and planning, that's the second time it's mentioned it, really important. They should be strongly encouraging reflection, as we just said. You should be encouraging the people to think about what they're doing and think about what they've done and how it can be better, so that when they pass, they don't just drive around thinking, oh, that's it, pass my test. They understand that it's a lifelong process. ADI should be supportive, not over-instruct, and give suitable and technically correct instructions or demonstrations where necessary. So in other words, it's saying you should not over-instruct. What I said to my people is I'm going to sit back and I'm not going to say much for a long time. And I want you to understand that's a massive vote of confidence in your ability, because by me sitting back and not talking much, that shows you're able to drive on your own. It's something I asked the examiner about at the end, and he said, it's okay if you do ask a lot of questions, but as long as they're relevant, because asking questions isn't over-instructing. It's only if you're bombarding them with endless questions and there's no silence, that's when it's not so good, because there should be times when, maybe for a minute or two, even more, you don't speak, so you sit back and just say nothing. And it says later on in this document that that's a massive vote of confidence, something along those lines. It says that's a very strong sign that the pupil is driving well if you're not, talking to them much. It says, however, the emphasis is likely to be on the use of tools such as practical examples to develop a more joined up and outward-looking approach. So in other words, like traffic lights, you don't want to teach someone to get to a red light, stop, hand brake on, set the pedals, go. That's like a very basic way of doing it. You should be doing it at the beginning. You should be teaching an experienced driver to plan ahead, scanning and planning, joined up, then outward-looking. So you think, right, the light's been on green a long time. Are they going to go red? Yep. So is anyone behind us? Yeah. So we slow down, clutch, lights have changed. Which gear could you do now? Second, off you go. Not stop, go. You should be like going almost into advanced driving, like keeping momentum. Okay, so next topic is a new full license holder. So I have to have a drink because I've got loads of talking to do. This video has already been well over an hour long. This one and the last one combined. So for a new full license holder, FLH, it says this full license holder pupil has demonstrated competence against those elements of the national driver standards that we test in the theory and practical tests. Remember, however, that these tests are limited in scope. They do not require the pupil to drive on all classes of road, and they do not test understanding of that part of the NDS which calls on learners to reflect on their competence as they go through their driving career. So, very important that what they're saying is, this is the DVSA admitting that the test isn't ideal, which we all know it's not. The test tests people's ability to drive a car. It doesn't test their ability to think. So if you've got a full license holder, you're doing a thinking lesson this is what it's all about. You shouldn't really be able to do anything about clutch control. Maybe if they're not good at it, but they should have mastered all that by now. It's all about how they think and how they progress forward with their forward thinking. So it says the ADI's objective at this stage should be to develop the pupil's competence across the full range of driving environments and to support and reinforce their commitment to lifelong learning around driving. That's what we're saying now. It's not just about get them ready for a test because they've already passed the test this stage. You've got to look beyond that. What can you do to help them on their journey to work? That's a good topic you can do. You could say, where do you need to drive to work each day? Should we go and do some of that route? Is there anything about that route you have trouble with? And they might say, well, I've got this particular junction. I don't really understand how you're supposed to do it. So it's not like physical press to brake, press to clutch. It's more thinking like, what does that sign mean? Why does it look a bit weird? What is it you have trouble with? Why do other drivers do it wrong? It's all about thinking, more thought process than practical skills. Reasons why an individual might come to an ADI at this stage include wanting to refresh their skills if they haven't driven since they took the test. That's quite common that people pass. They haven't driven in a while, might want to do a refresher course. Moving on to a bigger or technologically different vehicle. My car, for example, many cars now are quite advanced. Mine's got a lot of features that I could use with a new license holder. For example, cruise control, so you can press the button on the wheel and come off the pedals and the car holds the speed for you. You could teach that. You could teach them how to do things like parking assistance. You have a screen when you go to reverse, the screen comes on and tells you how far back you are from the car. You may not have had that in the car that you taught in. You may have, or they might have progressed to a bigger car. They might bring their car along. You do it in their car. And you could be teaching them how to use gadgets like that. Starting to drive for work, like we just said, they might want to get to work or drive for work. You might be different driving a van because you can pass your test in the car and drive a van. You might want to do a lesson on, driving without using the middle mirror, because in a van you wouldn't have a middle mirror. So you might say, we're going to pretend we haven't got a middle mirror, even maybe block the back of the window up or something to simulate being in a van. You'd have to check if that was legal to do on the test or whatever, but that's the kind of thing it means. Starting a family and wanting to improve their skills, that's a very common one that I get. People have had kids, they haven't driven for a while, they want the kids to be safe in the car, so they want to take just a refresher course, get things back to being good. Maybe they've kind of let things slip a bit since passing the test. Moving from an urban to a rural environment or vice versa, that's definitely a good one. You get people who maybe live in the countryside, come and live in a city, or move from a city to the country. It's a totally different kind of driving. When I went to live in Cornwall, we had things like sheep crossings. You're never going to see a sheep crossing in Birmingham. Signs that come on and flash saying sheep crossing. You have to give way to them. Whereas in Cornwall, you're never going to get a massive major high street. The biggest city that there is in Cornwall, the only city is Truro, and that's like a village. It's like going through a little village, and that's the main city. So different environment, definitely a lot to work on there. Starting to use motorways, massive topic you can do there. If they haven't been on the motorway before, there's tons you can do on that. A simple desire to become a better developed driver. You might just have someone who wants to just get better, just enjoy driving more. This pupil is likely to be enthusiastic because the reason it's saying that is they've come to you for training, so they probably are going to be enthusiastic. Not many people would pass a test and then go and do training if they weren't really bothered about driving. So they may be enthusiastic and in theory at least open to learning if they have chosen to take training. That's what I just said. Because I've read this before, so I know what it's going to say. If on the other hand they've been told to take it, perhaps by an employer, they might be resentful and resistant. So some employers send their employees on these courses where they have to go on a course to get cheaper insurance for the fleet. And then you might meet some resistance because they think they know it all. They see it as a waste of time, like you can't teach me anything, I've been driving years. And they're normally the people you can teach the most because all they think about driving is the physical pressing the brake. I know how to brake, I know how to move off. They've never once thought about the thought process, and when you start talking to them about it, they realise how little they actually know. They may well have already lost the disciplines of the mirror signal manoeuvre routine and forward planning skills. Most people, when they pass the test, become reactive drivers. They just react to problems. So whereas we was talking before about scanning and planning, they lose all that and they just react. They go speeding down the road, car in front brakes, they brake, look in the mirror, car come in, move off, car in front, stop. Very jumpy, basic driving. So you can work on that. They may not be used to driving in an eco-safe way. They may not even understand the term. They might not even know about like braking harder, waste fuel because you've got to move off again, rolling up to lights like I mentioned earlier on. They may not know about that, so you could teach them that. And the point of this video is I want to show you the things you can be doing with each pupil. So you've got loads of ideas what to do with each kind. They may be nervous about increased responsibility and accountability. So a lot of people think they want to learn to drive that they can speed and it doesn't matter, and they can crash and it doesn't matter. And of course, that's not the case, it does matter. But when they pass, they suddenly realise it's all on them, which it actually was before anyway. Because if you get caught speeding, that's your fault when you're learning. But a lot of people don't know that, and they think, well, now I've passed, more things are up to me. During their standards check, the key thing that the ADI must demonstrate is that they are able to find out exactly what it is the pupil wants from the lesson and put together a plan to deliver that. They must, of course, identify and deal with bad habits that might have been acquired. So in other words, you can ask the people what do you want to work on, they might say motorways, but you can't just ignore it. If they're missing the mirrors on the way to the motorway, you must mention that and not just think, oh, well, they've passed, who cares? However, if all they do is go over what the people should have learned prior to their test, they are unlikely to reinforce the commitment to lifelong learning. So very important that you can't just say, oh, you should have done all that before you test. Because then you're sort of saying, well, you haven't done it, you should have, so we'll miss that part out. If they're missing the mirrors, for example, explain to them, talk about the mirrors, so in a way you're taking them back to when they were learning, but you're always learning, that's what it says, a commitment to lifelong learning. You don't just pass a test and then suddenly that's it. You've got to keep learning throughout. So last one for now, this is the fourth kind of learner you can get, the experienced full licence holder. So it says that at this stage, the FLH, full licence holder people, should be more confident and competent than they were immediately after passing their test. They should have gained experience across all or most of the possible classes of road at night and in bad weather. They may already be driving for work and are likely to regard themselves as capable drivers, even though their application of safety routines and forward planning skills may show they are not quite as competent as they think. So a lot of people think that they know how to plan ahead when they actually don't. And they might have been driving at night, but they've been doing it totally wrong. But because they've been doing it over and over again, they're convinced that what they're doing is correct. It's like when people say, I've been driving 30 years. So what? What if you've been driving wrong or badly for 30 years? It means nothing. You can have someone who's been driving really well for a month. He's a better driver than someone who's been driving badly for 30 years. You also get that at crashes, don't you? I've been driving 20 years and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. I always say to them, you've missed out one word there. You've been driving badly for 20 years. And then as soon as you say that, they don't get it. They don't understand. But if you've been driving or doing anything for a long time, doesn't mean you're any good at it. It just means you've been doing it for a long time. You can sit here now saying 2 + 2 is 5. I can say that for 10 years. Doesn't make it correct. Reasons why an individual might come to an ADI at this stage include being required by employers to undertake additional training to keep insurance costs down, as we said before, wanting to drive more economically to reduce business costs. So you might have someone who says, look, I'm spending loads on fuel, can you show me how to save money? Quite rare, but it could happen. Because maybe they're staying in lower gears too long. Maybe they don't understand about higher gears save fuel. Having had an accident or near miss that was shaking their confidence. So yeah, if they've had a crash that's shaken their confidence, that's a common thing I get. People have been in a crash and they want to, they want to learn what they did wrong. They want to revisit the exact location. They tell you what happened and you explain what went wrong. Returning to driving after a period of ill health or loss of licence. So if they've been ill or if they've lost the licence for any reason, you can take them back through, how to kind of get back into the swing of it. Recognising that their driving skills are deteriorating through age or ill health. You might have someone who's getting older or iller and they might want to, recap on the skills because Sorry, hiccups again. Maybe they haven't. Whenever you talk a lot like this, it gives you hiccups. If you notice that when you're teaching, you talk a lot, you get the hiccups. So sorry about that. They might be getting older, or they might be ill, and they might just not be as alert as they once were, and they want to learn some skills. So instead of reacting to things, they can be proactive. This full licence holder may be an overseas driver who has significant experience, but having been in the UK beyond the statutory period, is now required to take tests to qualify for a UK licence. I've had this a lot. In fact, I've got someone now who's coming from America or Canada actually, and we're doing a course of lessons, getting her ready for a test. She knows how to drive, but she's always been driving automatic, so she's not used to a clutch or gears at all. This is a great example actually, because the instructor she had before me, can you believe this? She came from Canada. She's got an automatic licence. What would you immediately talk to her about? Would you talk to her about gears, clutch, driving on a different side of the road? The last instructor she had just took her out driving around, never even mentioned the clutch or the gears. I mean, what were they thinking? If you did that on a standards check, you'd be marked down, you'd fail for it. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? But he never thought to mention it. Depending on their reasons for undertaking training, these pupils could be enthusiastic or very nervous, willing or very resistant, like I mentioned before. So they either want to go on training or they don't. Depending on what the situation is, you might have to change how you teach. Older pupils may find it harder to learn new skills or get out of bad habits. Again, the longer you've been doing something, the harder it is to break the habit. They may have developed unsafe habits such as not leaving large enough separation distances and failing to carry out systematic observation routines. Like I said before, people react by braking harder than they can for unders. They're not used to scanning, checking the mirrors. Those are all faults you need to work on. In assessment, the key thing is that the ADI must demonstrate they can find out exactly what it is the people want from the lesson and put together a plan to deliver that. They must, of course, spot and deal with bad habits that might have been acquired. However, the lesson must take the people forward in their learning. If it does not deliver what the pupil is looking for, they will not engage with the learning process. So you must make sure you ask them what you want to learn, what skills you want to pick up, and work on those things. Don't just kind of say, well, you need to do manual car now, with gears and a clutch. So we'll go and do some manoeuvring. Yes, that could get them used to the clutch, but they want to practice the gears. You're not going to be changing gear much, reversing around a corner. This is not an exhaustive list of all possible scenarios. However, it should give some indication of the sorts of things that should be considered. So there you go, that's each of the four main types. So if you can identify which type of learner you've got, and base your lesson around what I've said in those, then that's what you do. Now, next few pages, those are really important. Those are probably the main 4 points. The next page is a reflective log, and this is something you can give to a pupil. It's a little box, and it just says, what went well today? What did not go as well today? What could I do to improve? Notes. Very handy that to give this to a pupil lesson before you standards check. Just say go away and just fill this in, and on the next lesson when we turn up, or giving me a day or two before so you can plan it, see what they've said and go over in front of the examiner so they can see that you are doing this. You don't have to. I don't do this personally at the moment, but you can. I record all my lessons on video and I can watch them back. So that's my kind of reflective log. I can look back at what we did if needed. You can fill this in using in front of the examiner. You can make your own up. No problem. Now, next page is the marking sheet. Again, I've already been over this in a different video, which is just under an hour long, so I won't go over all that again. If you haven't seen that video, it's a 57-minute video where I'll go over every single box on the marking sheet.